It's summer 2013. A man in South Wales watches a garbage truck rumble away. He doesn't know it yet, but that truck just carried away the password to $500 million. It's a quiet day in Newport, Wales, the kind of overcast summer morning that feels uneventful, almost forgettable. James Howells is cleaning out old computer parts from his home office. Outdated cables, dusty keyboards, a couple of hard drives that haven't seen power in years. He separates them into two piles, one to keep, one to toss. And then, in a moment he'll replay in his mind for the next decade, he accidentally places the wrong hard drive in the trash. It doesn't seem important, just a routine cleanup, the kind of thing you do without thinking. But inside that hard drive was a forgotten digital wallet, an early Bitcoin stash James mined back in 2009, roughly 8,000 coins. At the time, they weren't worth much, but the potential was massive, and James knew it. A few days later, as the garbage truck hauls away bags of electronics and broken furniture, James realizes what he's done. At first, it's disbelief, then panic. He scrambles to contact the local council. He asks if the truck can be rerouted or if the landfill can be paused. But by then, the trash has already been buried, somewhere beneath hundreds of thousands of tons of compacted waste. The hard drive is gone, not just misplaced. It is, quite literally, buried in garbage. And what was once a minor mistake is about to become one of the most expensive errors in digital history. Because Bitcoin is about to explode. To understand how James Howells ended up throwing away a fortune, we need to rewind the clock back to 2009. James was an IT professional, curious, technically sharp, and like a lot of early adopters, intrigued by the idea of decentralized money. He read Satoshi Nakamoto's white paper and decided to try mining. At that point, you didn't need specialized equipment. A decent laptop would do. You downloaded the software, joined the network, and let your CPU churn away. Over the course of a week or two, James mined 8,000 bitcoins without really thinking about it. They were stored on a private wallet, encrypted and backed up on a small external hard drive he tucked into a drawer. Then, like many people experimenting with early tech, he lost interest. Life moved on. Bitcoin was trading for fractions of a cent. There wasn't much reason to obsess over it. Years passed. Bitcoin started making headlines. $1, $10, $100 per coin, then $1,000. That's when James remembered the stash. He dug through his office to find the hard drive, but it wasn't there. That's when the pieces started falling into place. The cleanup, the misplaced drive, the trash run to the Newport landfill, and then the math hit him. 8,000 bitcoins. Even at the early 2013 price of $100 per coin, that was $800,000. By 2017, that same wallet would have been worth over $120 million. At Bitcoin's 2021 peak, more than $500 million. James didn't just lose access to some digital coins. He lost access to life-altering wealth, buried under a city's worth of garbage. And the worst part? He knew exactly where it was. Once James Howells accepted that the hard drive was in the landfill, he shifted from panic to planning. He wasn't guessing. He knew the week the trash went out. He knew the collection schedule. He had a rough idea of which section of the Newport municipal landfill it would have ended up in. In theory, with enough effort, it was retrievable. But the landfill wasn't some local junkyard. It was a sprawling site filled with hundreds of thousands of tons of compacted waste. regulated by environmental and public health agencies. Digging through it wasn't a matter of showing up with a shovel and a headlamp. Still, James didn't give up. He pitched the idea to the Newport City Council, offering to fund a supervised excavation. He consulted with data recovery specialists. Engineers proposed plans to locate the hard drive without disturbing the landfill's integrity. At one point, he even floated the idea of using robotic search dogs and AI scanning systems to narrow down the location. But every time, the council said no. They cited health risks, legal complications, environmental hazards, the potential to trigger methane leaks or contamination, and perhaps, quietly, the fear of what would happen if the operation failed, if they tore open a landfill for nothing. But James had reason to believe otherwise. The drive, if intact, would still be readable. Solid-state components like the one he used can survive for years, even buried. It wasn't a guarantee, but it was a chance. And with hundreds of millions on the line, he was willing to take it. As Bitcoin's value climbed, so did the cost of their refusal. James wasn't chasing an abstract dream. He had a real claim, buried beneath a specific patch of dirt. What he needed was access. What he got instead was bureaucracy. As Bitcoin kept climbing, James Howells grew more determined. The value of the lost hard drive was now being covered by major news outlets. Headlines called it the most expensive mistake in crypto history. He was no longer just a guy with a missing wallet. He was the man sitting on top of a digital gold mine, trapped under a city's trash. And he had a plan. In 2021, James assembled a team of engineers, data recovery specialists, and even environmental consultants to craft a full-scale recovery proposal. This wasn't a desperate man with a metal detector. It was a structured, multi-phase operation designed to excavate a specific zone of the landfill using industrial equipment, robotic arms, and precise GPS modeling. The cost? Roughly $11 million. But the potential reward was hundreds of millions. And to sweeten the deal, James offered to share the profits. Up to 25% of the recovered Bitcoin would go to the city of Newport if they approved the dig. He even secured venture capital funding to cover the full cost of the operation. Private investors were lining up to bet on what was, essentially, buried treasure. But despite the planning, the resources, and the financial incentives, the Newport City Council held firm. They rejected the proposal again, calling it too risky and environmentally unsafe. The message was clear. No matter how prepared he was, no matter how much money was on the table, they wouldn't touch the landfill. James Howells was being interviewed by BBC, CNN, even Bloomberg. He became the face of one of the strangest financial tragedies in the modern era. A tech-savvy man locked out of his wealth, not by hackers, not by market crashes, but by landfill policy. His proposal was no longer theoretical. The recovery plan included an excavation perimeter, a filtration system to handle toxic waste, and a data center on-site to immediately scan and identify any electronics pulled from the trash. Even with that level of detail, the Newport City Council remained skeptical. Their reasoning wasn't hard to understand. Landfills are complex ecosystems. They produce methane, leach chemicals, and harbor bacteria. Digging into one, especially for something the size of a deck of cards, could pose real risks. There were also political concerns. If they allowed this, what precedent would it set? Would others start demanding access to city waste sites, claiming lost property or buried value? But those concerns didn't stop James. In 2022, he returned with a revised pitch, one that was even more ambitious. Instead of simply asking to dig, he proposed purchasing the landfill outright. He would own the land, shoulder the liability, and execute the operation without putting public funds or safety at risk. He even brought in 2 high-profile crypto investors to back the deal. The total funding on the table? Over $50 million. Still, the council refused. So James pivoted again. He offered to give 60% of any recovered Bitcoin to the city. He'd build a tech hub in Newport. He'd reinvest the profits into the local economy. And still, the answer was no. To this day, Newport has not budged. No matter the money, no matter the plan, they have chosen to leave the hard drive buried. The James Howells story isn't just about one man's misfortune. It's a reflection of something deeper, something that cuts to the core of what cryptocurrency really is. Bitcoin is not like a bank account. There's no forgot password button. If you lose your private key, your wallet file, your seed phrase, that money is gone. Forever. Estimates suggest that 20% of all Bitcoin in existence, worth tens of billions of dollars, is permanently inaccessible, lost to broken hard drives, forgotten passwords, corrupted USBs, and yes, landfills. James's case is the most dramatic, but he's not alone. Others have shared stories of wallets on wiped laptops or coins mined in 2010 and never backed up. In crypto, custody is absolute. You either have it or you don't. And unlike traditional systems, no institution can reverse your mistake. This has become part of Bitcoin's mythology, a currency that rewards self-sovereignty but punishes even the smallest oversight. James Howells serves as a cautionary tale, but also as a reminder. In a world where digital wealth is becoming more powerful, more personal, and more portable than ever, we still don't fully understand what it means to lose it. And we haven't built the systems to protect people from that loss. More than a decade after James Howells tossed out that fateful hard drive, the story has officially reached its end. After years of public campaigns, revised proposals, international press coverage, and investor-backed recovery plans, the city of Newport still refused to grant permission. Not once, not ever. In 2023 and 2024, James tried everything. He assembled a team of AI experts, drone specialists, and robotic engineers to design a non-invasive, precision-guided excavation. He brought in private investors, offered the city 60% of any recovered Bitcoin, and even proposed building a tech hub in Newport with the profits. When that failed, he offered to buy the entire landfill. But Newport City Council wouldn't budge. Their stance remained unchanged. The environmental risks were too great, and the legal liability too unpredictable. Then, in early 2025, a High Court judge in the UK delivered the final blow. The ruling? The hard drive, once discarded, became property of the local authority. Howells' case was thrown out, declared to have no realistic prospect of success. There would be no dig, no robots, no closure. And as if to punctuate the end of the story, the city announced that the landfill site, once rumored to hide a digital fortune, was being converted into a solar energy farm. At the peak of Bitcoin's value, the lost wallet would have been worth over $950 million. That's not just a tragic number. It's a reminder of how high the stakes have become in this new era of digital finance. But it's also a story about bureaucracy. Even in the face of cutting-edge technology, fully funded recovery plans, and international media pressure, the system didn't move. The rules didn't bend. Bureaucracy outlasted innovation, not because it was right, but because it could. James Howells has now officially abandoned the search. Not because he gave up, but because the world around him gave no way forward. And through it all, one brutal irony remains. A single click, a moment's decision, a minor mistake, turned into a financial loss bigger than most people could earn in 1,000 lifetimes. But maybe what stings the most isn't the Bitcoin that was lost. It's knowing exactly where it is, beneath our feet, yet being powerless to do anything about it.